Zappos handle was just Tony's personal Twitter account.
Oh, really?
And still is today. But I would say, you know, the deciding factor is what can you sustain and do a good job on. And if you don't have the time or resources or team or backup to do a great job on 2 accounts, you should absolutely combine. This is especially easy for the person who's either a head of marketing or the head of the whole company to be able to just do and say, you know, this is me. In most cases, you will want to differentiate it into 2 different accounts, but don't run ahead and do that and then not be able to do a good job.
What would you advise to those companies who bring on employees who've got a pretty good Twitter reach, or maybe they have nothing at all? Would you tell them, yeah, go ahead and keep going on your profile, or here's your company one, and by the way, we own that after you go?
Well, there's a whole separate question that we won't even get into on this short interview, but you know, ownership of Twitter accounts is hugely contentious area to talk about. But anyway, you would definitely want to take someone with a following and encourage them to keep tweeting. Obviously, you want to ask them to include some mention of your company, you know, either in their background or in their bio or in the links about them to at least disclose it. Some companies have you put a little logo in your avatar photo. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You might also take that person's name and add them as a contributor to your corporate account and encourage them to contribute through your corporate account.
Well, there's an idea, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of cross-pollination and a lot of different ways to do that.
All right, so we're on Twitter now. Whether it's personal or it's a corporate one, what's one of your favorite tactics that you like to do that you think is really effective?
Something that I think is really not as well understood as I would have thought it would be is the ability to kind of carbon copy someone using a manual retweet, right? So what I mean by that is when you put someone's Twitter handle in the body of the tweet, it shows up on their mentions tab. Right? And so whenever I'm tempted to use that, you know, kind of automatic retweet button, I don't always use it because while that does now, it's new to the product that it does now send a notification to that person that they've been retweeted, I still think it's a bit more visible to show up on the person's mentions tab. So I will generally, if I want to show up on the person's mentions tab, if I really want them to see that I'm appreciating and promoting their work, because that's, you know, it's a compliment, it's a thank you to see that. I copy it by hand, I type in RT, and then I just post it as a manual retweet. I actually wrote this up on the HubSpot blog. There's a blog post about it if you search or you want to put link in the show notes. It's quite simple to do, and it really adds a bit more impact. So how and when would you use that? Well, you know, one of Twitter's beauties is it is still a bit of a gate jumper, right? It's like when you first had email, you could go, I wonder if Bill at Microsoft.com goes anywhere, and you could email Bill Gates for a while, right? Not as easy to do now. So I use this when I'm thanking a journalist for a piece of coverage, because I do HubSpot's PR. I use this if maybe I've met someone at a conference and I'm retweeting them afterwards, and it's just kind of a little subtle way of saying hello again. Now, don't use it to brown nose people. Don't be annoying. Don't be that guy. But when you genuinely are promoting someone else's work, why not, you know, share with them that you're excited and that you're promoting it? Because also the people who are interested in the tweet and like the tweet can then click right through and see their profile, and you know, it's sort of how the Twitter love gets spread around.
Got to spread that Twitter love. But that you mentioned, you know, don't be that guy and stuff, and that brings up my next question: is what are some of the most common blunders now that you're seeing still being practiced out there? I mean, being
that guy, or that girl, whatever. Equal opportunity.
Be that guy or gal.
I would say they all fall under the heading of selfishness. The most effective thing you can do on Twitter is make yourself useful. You really want to be serving a certain audience. You want to have something in your mind about who that audience is. And you want to be serving them. You want to be trying to turn things, even the things that are straight up about you, turn them around, make them about the reader. So let's say you have a business Twitter account and you're tweeting some blog posts. Don't just go title, link, read
my post.
Right. Ask them a question. Let's say it's a post on analytics, right? Ask them a question about how they're doing their analytics. Don't make the question way off topic so they're disappointed when they get there and it's your blog post. Share the most exciting factoid in the blog post.
Add a little value, save them some time.
Share the best quote from the blog post. You know, like when you see how third parties tweet other articles that they didn't write, you'll see certain patterns emerge about, you know, you tend to want to share something of the article to hook the reader in. You want to share something that sort of convinces the person why they should even go click on it. And in general, people are much better at sharing other people's content than sharing their own. They tend to put a lot more thought into it. Because if I'm tweeting some article, I want you to know, well, why'd she bother?
Yeah.
Right? Is she just flogging her own stuff? And so you can use this when you, in fact, are flogging your own stuff by just making it a little more customer friendly. So I would say the blunder to avoid, the big caption of it is selfishness. You know, before you post that tweet, say, is anybody else in the world possibly interested in this?
Right.
And even when I'm being a little self-indulgent and silly and sharing, like, a snapshot of my food or something I'm doing or a scene from my life with my kids, I tend to try and think, is this at least a little bit amusing?
Right.
You know, will someone get a smile, a laugh, a moment's thought, you know? And I certainly am not 100% on that, but I do definitely try.
So you've got... So you're talking about some blunders, some best practices. You clearly know how to do it well because you've got this massive audience now, over 100,000 followers.
It's a little freaky.
Yeah, I mean, and for people like me who think they're fairly inbound savvy or trying to really leverage the platform, it's a little intimidating. Like, could I ever hit the top of that mountain for 100,000 followers? I think it's probably the same for the viewers. Is that a goal that they should have? If you're going into Twitter, like, what do we do for goals? I mean, is it to build a massive audience or what?
No, it's definitely not. Your goal should always be engagement. Because let's face it, an audience of 10,000 isn't that much good to you if you really only need 3 new customers a year, right? You probably need a Twitter account of about 75 people who are the absolute right people in the right industries and the right positions at the right companies.
Right industries. Right
if you're
people.
trying, right, you know, like, it's sort of, people always go after follower numbers. It's the most obvious thing. I kind of wish Twitter's interface didn't show it quite so prominently. The best analogy I can give people, especially experienced marketers like you guys, is it's kind of like going to one of those spammy, like, you can buy lists of people's emails companies and buying a bigger list.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got 10 million crappy email addresses instead of 1 million. Like, let me know how that goes. So seriously, I think engagement is the utmost goal. And I think my answer to how do I get more followers is always, you know, honestly, the best way to do that is take extremely good care of the followers you already have.
Take good care of your people. Get the right people. Take good care of that little family.
Because they reproduce, right?
Yeah.
They bring in other people. Talk to them. Follow them back. God forbid, read their content and retweet them when they post really good stuff.
A revelation.
You know? I mean, it's like, well...
But it is. I mean, people don't do it.
People turn to me for help building their following. I'm like, turn to your following. You know, I click through some of these people. They already have 1,000 followers. I'm like, why are you think my audience is going to want to come follow you? You haven't even given me a compelling reason to follow you, let alone help you. So, you know, the other thing that helps with that goal of engagement is actually take a moment and kind of write a mission statement for your account. Now, this is scary advice for me to give because I don't have a mission statement for my account.
It's tough.
But think about it this way. If one of your relatives was at a dinner party and they were like, oh, you should follow Nick's account, he's just great. What line would they then say next as to why they should follow? Who and why? You know, and I'm not telling you anything that we haven't known as marketers for years. Understanding your persona, targeting them, giving them a reason. It's just that in Twitter, you're one click away from that unsubscribe. And so if you're not consistently trying to make yourself useful, if there's no clear purpose why your account exists aside from flogging your brand, it's just not going to work.
Totally. Well, I think when we look at what's coming down the pipe, at least when I look at Twitter, there's a lot of tools now and stuff like that. So, I mean...
Lots of tools.
Do you have a favorite tool? I mean, and do you think that the future of Twitter is about leveraging these new platforms on top of the platform? Like, are you more of a naturalist, or do you like some gadgets and tools?
Sure. So actually, I used to run a startup called 140.com, which is how I ended up here at HubSpot. Okay. And it set out to become Twitter's app store because I noticed there was so much innovation going on the API and thousands and thousands of different tools. I found you guys
years before I worked here.
Right?
That's why it was so great when you guys came over.
Right?
Yeah.
And by the way, if anybody watching this misses the old directory, it is available. We open sourced it. So the data is now being used at Sochdir, like social directory, SOCDIR.com. You can find all the old ratings and reviews and stuff like that. But in today's world, Twitter very recently took some interesting new steps to actively support business tools on Twitter.
Right.
And I think that's great. There is finally something of a directory that Twitter makes available.
Right.
There's kind of a seal of approval, and there's 3 different types of tools they've broken it up into. They're finally being very clear with their ecosystem that they don't want you building Me Too Twitter clients. They want you building more interesting stuff that really adds value, particularly for brands and businesses. So, you know, as far as my favorite tools, obviously we have a close partnership here at HubSpot with Hootsuite. I love HubSpot's own social media engagement tools. One of my pet tools that I love is called Twirl.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how much longer Twirl will be available. It was the precursor to Seismic. Twirl was an independent client that Loic Lemur bought as part of Seismic, and he kept supporting it the whole time. So I've always used Twirl. Now that Seismic is becoming part of Hootsuite, I hope Ryan will also keep Twirl up and running. I'll definitely be begging him to when I see him in San Francisco in a couple weeks. I like Twirl because it's a very simple single-column Twitter client. So I can keep that in the margins of my computer screen, and Twitter for me is really a steady break. Now, I don't have @Pistachio running through Twirl because it follows over 100,000 people, and as you might imagine, it's noise.
Yes.
There's an important point I didn't mention. Don't use your Twitter, your corporate Twitter account, as the main way your company is reading Twitter, right? Use it as the welcome pad. Follow everybody back unless they're spam bots, right? I mean, can you imagine giving the customer the hand like that? It's sort of like putting up a website and not adding a contact me page.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So follow everybody back so that they may DM you and they feel respected as someone who's opted to take some of their time and give it to you, some of their attention and give it to you.
Common courtesy.
And then use lists to follow people. Use search and monitoring tools to follow people. Use a separate read-only account. That's what I do. So the account I have going through Twirl is about 800 people. It never tweets.
Right.
It's just reading the tweets of 800 people. And a typical work hour for me looks like this. I work for 45 minutes. I take 5 to 10 minutes to look at Twitter, and then I grab a glass of water and dive in again.
Wow.
So I kind of mix it up through the day.
That's good.
But I think in the future we're going to see increasingly better and better business tools. There's already some amazing platforms that can detect breaking news events, breaking events of economic importance, really, high-end corporate stuff where they're looking at that wash of data and trying to make sense of it.
So more of like the measuring, analyzing, and then also just being able to feed that information back to people. That's where you think the real value is in this API and the future of business tool development.
And without flogging HubSpot, we've just added some social media tool functionality that I've been looking for years, in that it helps you better understand who those masses of people are in your following, because taking very good care of those people is key. So now with HubSpot's social tool, if somebody's talking to you on Twitter and they're one of your leads in your HubSpot tool, you're going to be reminded that that's not just any random person. That's someone who's been looking at your website, downloading content, engaging with your company. And you're going to be able to be much more attentive in Twitter. So that kind of, social CRM, people have been talking about it for years. It's finally starting to happen in significant ways, and that's pretty exciting. You can set up email follow-ups to somebody who's engaged with a particular piece of content you shared on Twitter. And that's amazing. Marketers haven't been able to segment like that before.
And that kind of circles back to what you were saying, that it's not a massive audience, it's the right people, the right connections.
It's there's a great post up today on Business to Community that somebody who came to Inbound wrote about, content marketing, yes, and context marketing.
Yes.
When you hit the wrong context with somebody, they know right away you're trying to manipulate them or BS them. They make a great comparison to the movie Inception, where apparently the manipulated dreams, the way you could tell your dream had been manipulated was something was completely random and out of context in it. Right? And so think about it. Most marketing, when it's poorly targeted, poorly personalized, creates that yucky feeling.
This is wrong.
Don't be yucky, right?
Don't be yucky.
Give people context, and I think the better tools are going to keep evolving us towards that. Hopefully we'll continue to lead the way here at HubSpot.
And we'll try not to be yucky.
Try not to be yucky,
we'll do
exactly.
Our best. Laura,
make yourself useful.
Laura, where can people go to find out what you're working on, and find out what's coming up next?
Well, sure. The best place to go just to find all my links is HubSpot.com/pistachio. Yes, I did make them alias it to my Twitter handle, because who
Great.
knows who Laura Fitton is?
I do.
And everything else is linked from there.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much for joining us, Laura. Laura Fitton here at Pistachio on Twitter, HubSpot.com/pistachio, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, everybody.